So did Rex Giggs, you know, he moved one down there a couple of times.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Mantripp Meets. And this week we are back live because the technology is working and we're all good to go. And sitting behind the curtain, you can't see him at the moment, but he's in another room, not of course in Lowestoft, but somewhere else in the UK, is our guest for this evening. He's a former Formula 2 British champion. He's raced Formula 3, he's raced Formula 4, he's even raced Formula 1. He is, of course, Jerry Peachment. And Jerry is with us tonight. And
thanks for inviting me. I'm good.
So normally I'd start the show off by talking about powerboat racing. Tonight I'm going to go out of my depth because my knowledge of football is zero. So a couple of things that I want to just get out of my depth on. Right. First of all, because I know that you're an avid football fan. You support, dare I mention, Leeds. Yes. So I guess really, how's Leeds doing, and how's your team progressing? Because I know there's one or two of your fans from the boat world want to know how your football team are doing.
Right. I've supported Leeds, well, from being 4 or 5 years old, and I mean, I've always had an affinity with the club, and over having children, racing, playing football myself has sort of, I haven't really been able to follow them in the way I wanted to. So children have obviously grown up. I've got a bit more free time. So the last sort of, I suppose, 7 or 8 years, I've sort of followed them home and away.
So how was it last year then? Because obviously not being able to get to matches and that, I bet that was very odd.
Especially after the heartbreak the previous season, because we obviously lost to Derby in the playoff semi-final, and then not being able to go to the iPro Stadium in Derby for the sort of penultimate game as well, where we actually won the trophy. It was very difficult, but. Anyway,
and of course, in other news this week, the whole breakaway series from football, which is now not going to happen anyway. I mean, how would you have felt if that would have?
No, I was totally against it. Yeah, it was purely greed. That was, it was only the only word you could use really for that. Thankfully, they've seen sense.
I guess it was a little bit like OMC and Mercury and whatever back in the day in boat world.
Right. Oh yes, exactly. Yeah.
But of course, football's your passion now. But back then, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, predominantly, it was a different passion. It was water and it was powerboat racing. So as we start with all our guests, I mean, how, when, why, and how did this water sport all happen?
Well, actually, water skiing. I was actually quite keen on water skiing, tournament skiing, and I had quite a few training sessions over at Gosfield Lake, because I was actually contemplating starting tournament skiing, slalom and what have you. Then I met my wife, Suki, and then was introduced to obviously the family. So I met James, and we used to sort of take the ski boat out, go skiing and what have you. And then Robin asked me one weekend, he said, do you fancy coming along? And so we went along, and I thought, oh, this looks quite interesting. And so I actually ended up mechanicking for James for two or three seasons. And what happened was Stuartby used to have, I don't know if it's still going, but they used to, at the end of the season, they used to have like a mechanics race. So that was my first sort of intro into powerboat racing. I raced in the mechanics race, and then, that was it. I was hooked.
So the question is then, so were you quicker than James back then
Oh,
in that race?
No, not initially. I mean, I was sort of crawling around, but no, I just like the excitement and being close to the water. Obviously, skiing, you get a sensation of speed, and no, I really enjoyed it. And Robin then said to me a couple of weeks afterwards, before the new season, said, do you fancy having a go? And I said, well, yeah, I'll have a go if you like, and the rest is history.
And there's a lot of history actually that you managed to cram in.
Yeah.
And we'll obviously we start off with so the mechanic side of things with James. I mean, obviously, yeah. So that took up, as you said, a couple of years. So was that at club level? I guess it was at club and national level, probably.
Yeah, and we did the trip to Martinique as well, which he did actually quite well over there. We did a couple of international races. Yeah, so and that really, I suppose, that really got me enthused. The travelling aspect and racing in different countries and what have you.
Yeah, and I'd forgotten how quick actually James was. I said actually in last week's show, just watching back the videos, and it was easy to remember other names that were around at the time. Obviously, we had Ken and Andy Elliott was around.
The Formula 4 field back then was absolutely unbelievable. The quality of drivers. I mean, as you say, it was Ken, Paul Blackburn was racing at that time, Swarbrick. I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it? Jelf brothers obviously were racing.
And these were all names that would later haunt you in Formula 2, of course. But we'll come on to that later. No, exactly. But they kind of stuck with you. But yeah,
Mark Rolls was racing. He was actually racing in Formula 4 then as well. Yeah, that was So it was, the field was absolutely top notch. And I think, to be fair, that probably was. That period of time for Formula 4 was probably the best period. We were very lucky, really.
Yeah, and I think realistically, Formula 4 kind of tailed off. I remember being at Cardiff, actually, when we had the Formula 1s at Cardiff. It was probably, in the UK, the last of the best F4, at national level. I mean, since then, obviously, we've had Formula 4 championships, but which have been really good. And F4 actually is still quite a good class. I know it's changed a bit now, but it still has a future.
I'm talking about the old guys when it was, two strokes and the 850s. Yeah.
And of course there was the battle, wasn't there? We said about breakaway series, and I mentioned about OMC and Mercury, and I think we mentioned it with Ken and we mentioned it with Robin, but there was the Yamaha versus Selva, and
it was. I raced Yamaha initially, and then I had a Mulgard, and then raced with the Selva. That was non-cell. That was actually one of Jan Helgaard's boats. Was my first Selva boat. That was quite a quick boat. And then obviously the cell boats came in. So I had a Mulgard from Christian sailboat and with the Selva, and that was quite a competitive outfit. So I had really good fun with the Formula 4.
And as I said, it was a big class at the time, and the numbers.
We've got to remember Dave Giggins, of course. I completely.
So Dave Giggins. So Dave, who can actually drive anything, and I remember actually sort of. Yeah, Dave used to turn up, and sometimes actually the boats didn't necessarily look that great, did they? There'd be all sorts of various colours or whatever, but he could certainly drive a boat. And I remember him turning up at Alton Broad one. I think he borrowed Nigel Gill's boat, and actually I think he won the the meeting, that particular meeting. But so you're getting to grips with F4. You're getting to grips with all these stars as they would then later become. Actually, we'll just stay on Formula 4 for a bit, because obviously you were doing the mole guard holds. You'd gone also from non-cell to safety cell. So
that's right.
That would have been a bit of a
transition
change. How difficult was that to adapt?
I think the first race, actually no, the first test session, I think was, I did find it quite strange being strapped in, but actually once you got to grips with it, it was much better, because you're not sort of flying around the boat, and you can control yourself. And yeah, I did find it much better being strapped in.
But then, of course, you've got if it did go wrong, you've then got the hassle of getting out. And I'm actually trying to did it. I can't ever remember. I know that there was the F2 at Nottingham scenario, but but I was trying to think of a scenario where I can't ever remember you putting it. Well, yeah, I can't remember you putting it over backwards.
Yeah, me and Dave Giggins, we both went over together.
Took each other's air, no doubt, and just went up and
we both, just off the start, basically, we were trying to obviously get as much air as we could, and it was the vacuum just took us both over. And to be fair, that was my first experience. Quite weird being sort of stuck in the cockpit, hearing all the engines racing past. But it was quick, release the wheel and undo the buckles, and away you go, swim out.
It just and I guess there was early days of dunk tests and things that you would have had to have done, which must have been, back in the day, must have been fairly primitive.
Yeah, well, I guess, we never had air in the, when we first did the dunk test, it was just literally steering wheel off, belts, no canopy even. And then obviously the canopies were introduced, and then air was introduced. So it got a lot more complex later on, I suppose.
So F4, I mean, we said how busy it was nationally, and it was. So your success at national level, I mean, you would have had race wins and never quite the title.
No, I never won the British Championship. Close. Nottingham. I almost won the European Championship at Nottingham, and I think it was about 5 laps from the end. Unfortunately, with the Selva, the top piston seized, and my race was run. Sorry, so that was probably my closest to sort of an international title with Formula 4. Yeah.
But when you're in F4, I mean, were you looking at Formula 3? Because Formula 3, and we said to Ken, what a class that was back in the day.
That was very, very good. I hadn't really contemplated F3, to be perfectly honest, but obviously with the involvement with Christian, he was actually quite keen to have an F3 boat on the circuit. He didn't have one at the time because Dave dominated Formula 3 with his boats, so I agreed to have a go, and he gave me some support, and we did okay. I mean, we were learning on the job, unfortunately, because there was no real test data with props that anybody had. So we were having the propellers tuned, we were altering the balance in the boat as we were on the job, really. And we progressed, and I think I had a fourth in the World Series, which was not bad in the first year.
Actually, I did have. Now, where was that in my notes? Because I had that written down exactly, because it's all. So F3, 4th in 93 and 94 in the European Championship. So that's pretty consistent. And as I said, again, there was some big names in Formula 3.
Yeah,
I remember it was a big class. I remember, I'm trying to think of the year. Was that 1994 at Cardiff when you're racing F3? And what a circuit that was, because I remember when I turned up at the dock, and I thought, we're going to race around that then, are we? And because to me, it didn't look very, very long. And in an F3 boat, I don't know how the F1's really got on, but I mean,
it was. I think it was. I mean, you could I wouldn't say comfortably race an F3. It was tight, but the F1, oh my God, I don't know how on earth they were, even contemplating going around there, because it was very, very tight for them.
So the F3 in the mole guard. I mean, other parts of your career with the F3. I mean, any other sort of noticeable standout?
Not really. No, I mean, I was, as I say, I wouldn't say I was in the most competitive boat, although it was decent. I suppose at that point, then I was looking at F2 because Mike Ashton, he phoned me up and said, "Oh, you should really, take an interest in F2 because it's a good class and it's the way." And it was actually called SST 120 then, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the original.
That's right. Yeah,
that's right. So and I sort of dismissed it a bit, and then I sort of went to a race and I thought, well, actually, this looks actually quite interesting. It's bigger boats and a bit more grunt and
almost Formula One. And I remember because there was a time when sort of when ON, as you know it,
yes,
back in the day when it was ON, OZ, and ON, all the drivers really were building up the series that was then the Fonda series.
That's right.
So some of the guys had kind of gone off and done that, and really nationally, I remember there was a couple of seasons or so where we didn't really have any big cat boats. There was the VP class, and then
Hydrocats. Was it Hydrocats? Wasn't it? They had not Hydrocat. It was all northern based. A lot of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And they raced the STV sort of
STV, that's
VP,
yeah.
and the
exactly.
Mirage holes. But so that was where you were going to get your big boat action. As I've said, F4 was still strong then. But then F2 come along, and Colin and Owen were there from the start. Tim Whitehead in a Burgess, Phil Duggan sort of, and Mark Voles had a look, and he then went into Formula 2. So I guess really, I suppose, and then obviously Mike prompted you with these phone calls. I suppose it was really only a matter of time, before you joined. And
so I obviously I didn't want to invest a lot of money into it, just in case it was one of those classes that sort of disappeared. So I bought Julian Clark's outfit, which actually is an F1 boat, but actually surprisingly went very well. It was quite narrow, so it sort of accelerated pretty quickly, which obviously in F2 is important. So I always got out of the turns and generally got off the line quite quick. So I enjoyed that. That was it was a good learning curve and a decent boat to sort of learn in.
And the grunt difference, because obviously Formula 3 is we were speaking to Ken the other week about the change from F4 to F3, and all of a sudden you've got all that horsepower behind you. So
Yeah.
with Formula 2, was it sort of double that again, or was there?
I wouldn't say
not so
double.
much?
I mean, the thing is with probably F3 is one of the hardest boats to control, I would say, because you're obviously searching for the maximum out of everything, and it's very, very flighty. You know, to run an F3 where it should be, you've got to really get the tail up, and because of the length of them, you haven't got with an F2, it's a bit more forgiving because you can balance it a bit better maybe, and because of the length. And yeah, so I think F3 probably is probably one of the most difficult boats to drive, I would say.
And then you're saying about obviously this Burgess, the ex Julian Clark Burgess boat, which in the end ended up in the hands of Mike Smith after you.
Yes, but, of course it did. Yeah.
but in the meantime, so you started to get the feel for F2, started to get the buzz for F2.
Mm-hmm.
Robin's starting to put this whole package together. I think it was along with Pat Blackburn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And everything kind of just gelled together all at once. So to be around at that time with obviously your father-in-law's putting the F2 series together, and you're one of the drivers. So were you planning on obviously knowing that there's a future, then planning on a better boat and bigger things?
Yes. Well, actually, my role was to actually go around and look at the circuits initially. And so in Willen Lake, actually, I was with Mike Smith. Actually came with me to Willen Lake, and we sort of instigated that initially. And then the Rother Valley, we looked at that. Robin actually went to Stockton, but the idea obviously was to take the racing to the people, and because obviously Alton Broad on a Thursday night for a club race, back in the day when there was lots of boats, it was very, very popular. So, I guess we wanted to try and emulate that. I don't think you could ever compete with Bristol because that was a totally different animal. But yeah, we sort of take the racing to the people, and we thought we might get a bit better exposure. And to be fair, I think largely we were reasonably successful. And we
certainly went to some nice places, didn't I?
You
said Stockton and Rother Valley was another.
Yes, it was. It was hard work, obviously turning up, but we had a lot of input from the club. Don't forget, there was Ernie and Roger who did the timing, Malcolm Curtis and his team with the rescue. Obviously, you and Phil Williard as well, and then John and Sue Stavely. They were really instrumental in the whole operation. And obviously, you said you had Mike. You were messaging Mike earlier. His father and mother, Mike and Jenny, they were stalwarts really. They used to arrive early, get everything organised. It was we had a real good team, to be perfectly honest. And you needed a good team because it was quite an undertaking. What we tried to achieve.
And I think what was achieved was really, really good. I mean, as we said last week, there was 20 plus Formula 2s. I remember that I think it was 1998 when everybody rocked up at Alton Broad. Obviously yourself, you by this time just skipping ahead a little bit, but I did want to go back to one or two other things. But this time in 1998, so there's yourself, there's obviously your teammate, or was he an ex-teammate at that? Well, I think he was still your teammate at that point. But there was Larry Gage anyway.
Yeah, Larry.
There was Ted Walsh. There was Alan Marshall. There was Paul Blackburn. There was Steve Curtin. There was James Peverell, and the names come on and on and on.
Of course.
And all of a sudden, you have now got to qualify, and to achieve that. And I know when I've spoke to other people, Robin, I think, had gone along and sort of said, I want you in Formula 2, and did his best to make it happen. So I think it did achieve everything. But going back, so I mentioned earlier your teammate, or your back in the day of the early days of Red Bull. So Larry Gage. Mm-hmm. So I often ask the question to some people. Obviously, when I was young, it was Tom and Bob.
Yes.
And then obviously that all happened, and that they no longer raced. So, and then there was never a replacement. But then obviously the teaming of yourself and Larry was probably
Yeah.
the next Tom and Bob,
Yes.
because big boats, a team, and even at one point, even running 10, which was
10,
obviously
of
your
course.
number,
That's
and
right.
Larry was 11. So,
Yes. Yeah.
even that comparison, whether it
Yeah.
was an accident, I mean, obviously you were number
No,
10
no, no.
anyway, always, but
Yeah.
but so the whole Larry thing, because it wasn't until looking back at some photographs that I noticed that I think it was in the F4. You were sponsored by Wild Duck, or certainly you had
That's right.
Wild Duck on the
Yeah.
side of the boat. So
Yeah.
this was an early development in the partnership, I guess.
That's right. Well, Larry actually bought a Formula 4 from us, a Peveril.
Yep.
And so that was his first sort of introduction into powerboat racing, really. Yeah. So he came down and I sort of and he had Ray, his friend, raced as well at the same time. I can't
Ray
remember his
Lincoln.
name. Ray Lincoln.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, they both had Peveril boats. And I sort of helped him, advised him a little bit, I suppose, initially, and then I think, to be fair to Larry, he really did struggle in an F4 because he's quite a big chap, and you need to be Dave Giggins size really to get an F4 going quick. So so he obviously promptly moved to F2, and we had a good season together with the Red Bull team. It was really, it was nice. Yeah, very good.
And then of course, from then, Red Bull had come along, and actually, we were saying off there, the whole Red Bull package kind of developed. So you've got a 2-boat team, you've got a sponsorship package from Red Bull, who you told me were based.
Yes. So how I managed to get the Red Bull sponsorship was that their first UK office was in Bury. So it was purely by accident that I found out. I was sort of going in a service station and saw this drink. At that time, really didn't know what it was. I knew it had energy drink on it, and I thought, Eastgate Street, Bury St Edmunds. Literally that was it. So I put a proposal together, went down there, and arranged a meeting. And they said, "Oh yeah, we've sort of looked up and seen that you're relatively successful and you're local." And to be fair, at that time, there was myself and Nick Baker, who was, I think he was world champion windsurfer at the time. We were the only 2 English or British athletes at that time, because obviously it was relatively new into the country. They then moved from Bury to London, and their input sort of increased as we became a bit more successful, and they had quite a bit of media coverage and attention, and they used the boat themselves for different events. And it was really really successful time.
Because obviously with Formula 2 comes a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you want to, obviously most of it, if not all of it, comes from your own bank balance, but so it's always helpful to have partners along the way. So obviously there was always, I know it was Castrol were always involved at some to some degree. And
well, that was actually, Castrol was really from the Formula 4 days when we used to import the Selva engines. The gearbox were notorious, and I had some dealings with Castrol, sort of with the Yamaha, and so I was invited to Swindon to try and sort out this problem. And so we developed an oil called XD71, which is now today called TAF X, and they actually use it as quite a common transmission oil now. So I did all the testing for that oil. Yeah. So because the gearbox was awful, and they put some graphite, some PTFE, some different components in to try and make the gearboxes last. And to be fair, where we were generally 1, maybe 2, we were getting 5, 6 meetings out of a Selva gearbox, which is actually unheard of. So that was quite interesting. And that again, they just sort of followed me, and because obviously I'd sort of given them a bit of input. They followed me, to actually all the classes, because I had Castrol at with the F3 as well.
So yeah, so that was always good, and then obviously there were other names, especially with the Formula 2. Vauxhall was
yeah, Vauxhall. Yeah, I was instrumental with the launch of the Frontera.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they used the boat for some media stuff, and so they used to give me a car to tow the boat, and yeah, that worked well. It was a good partnership, really. It was very good.
And you're saying about doing all the press stuff. I mean, one of the other things you've done, and actually wasn't with Vauxhall, but actually you raced around Nottingham with a Nissan touring car.
Yeah, Anthony Reid. I was approached, quite bizarre, really. I was approached because they wanted to do a comparison with a touring car and a boat, similar to the thing Jonathan Jones did. So basically, I did a lap of Holmpier Point. They then replicated the lap at Bruntingthorpe, which is a test track, and I think we were 2.5 seconds quicker in the boat. Yeah, 2.5, 3 seconds. Oh yeah. I think obviously turning tight and quick is, top speed. Top speed is where they have it. But that's interesting, actually, because not a lot of people know this, but we never, and I must obviously got to mention my team, because what a team. I was blessed, really. Obviously Barry Goodchild, who sort of known Mercury V6s inside out, and I've known Barry for a long time. Ron Howe's obviously the master.
And he was the master because he obviously worked for yourself, but when you look at the other names that he worked with, and
everyone, I mean, obviously the other number 10, the famous number 10, he worked with him. Bill Siebold, he worked with. Yeah, actually he worked with Tom and Bob, didn't he? So he's, in the world of powerboat racing, he's like a god, really. And so that was, and obviously Barry's son Carl Goodchild, Mark Maguire used to race juniors. He used to help. Dave Manning occasionally, obviously another club member. He came. So I mean, and to be fair, unless you've got a dedicated team, it's very difficult to succeed, I would say.
So how hands-on were you sort of in like the later part of your career when you're winning things? Did you still like to be on the tools around the engine?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, Barry and I used to, because we sort of, I think we were quite meticulous. So what I was going to allude to was that what a lot of people didn't realise was we never actually tested for speed. So if we went to Stewartby, we used to test acceleration. So we'd have points on the bank where we'd have people with stopwatches. So it was all about acceleration. So I don't think I was ever the quickest F2, but I could certainly, and you'll see on a lot of the races, it's all about the start and coming out of the turn, where that's where I probably won the race.
And actually, we'll edit in the video of you at Willen Lake, which we'll talk about in a bit. But again, a lot of the start straights aren't actually that long, are they? I mean, Broad start straight is not that long.
No, that's right.
The Valley was not that long in full stop. So there was various races that, as you say, you didn't necessarily need
I will say, because what I was going to say is about the team, Milton Keynes. The first race we had at Milton Keynes, the water there was so peculiar. No matter what we did to the boat, we just could not get any lift in it. It was like sucking the life out of the boat. Yeah. It was so dead, the water. So I said to Ronnie, "Look, Ron, we need more lift in the back." He then phoned Dave Burgess, who met Barry on the M1 that night with some wood. Ronnie then rebuilt the back of the boat to induce lift into the back, and you've seen the video, haven't you?
Yeah.
My God, it was like chalk and cheese the way the boat handled after. It was just incredible. So I mean, Ron, he knows his stuff. I mean, obviously, I gave him the information that what we needed, but he whenever I said we need this, we need that, he was like magic. He just knew exactly what to do.
And as you said, Ron, very, very handy as well, because he had actually built an F4 for you as well, hadn't he? So,
yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he built an F4. Yeah, that was quite a successful little boat as well. Yeah.
So he, even then, he was still on it, and obviously he knew exactly how to get the most out of that boat. And
yes.
I have to say, because your style of driving compared to, I'm going to compare you obviously to Mark Rolls, because Mark always used to stand the boat up one end and always used to look sort of, spectacular. But you were a bit more level-headed. Yours was flat, but flat but quick.
Yeah. I sort of took the view that if you can keep it smooth, keep everything smooth. It's like driving a car, really. The erratic drivers are not necessarily that quick. So you just keep it smooth, keep a nice line. And I do think that Alton Broad, obviously, with the pin turns, I think that's where I could probably outturn most people from the practice at Alton Broad. I had no qualms in completely flat out and just on the pin, hit the trim,
Yeah.
So, exciting.
And you stuck with the Burgess boat all the way through F2. I mean, what was it about the Burgess boat? Was it just a partnership that I know from my experience with boats, I've now found a boat builder who builds me boats, which is actually, I know what they're going to do, and I know they'll be quick and successful, and I know that they're not really going to do anything silly. So I guess, is that how you found the Burgess? You knew Dave, the animal? Yes.
Obviously, Dave is a dear chap. Great boat designer. There was a few tweaks, that he knows we wanted, but unfortunately he couldn't achieve it. Because I was having a plastic boat built, and obviously it didn't sort of materialize. But when it did arrive, it wasn't the correct measurement to what we wanted. But he was limited to what he could do with what he had, basically. So it was great guy, absolute wonderful boat builder. And obviously won me the world championship, didn't he?
Well, he did in 2000, which we'll come to in a minute. But not only did he do that, but he also won you a couple of British titles as well. In days when Formula 2 was really super strong. So and we mentioned earlier about the Jelfs, and they were there. Rolls was there, and
very, very good. Yeah, great competition. Yeah, all over. I mean, a lot of those drivers are sort of, I would say, notorious, aren't they? It's it was great. It was really great to be a part of. Well, to be fair, we actually grew together because Formula 4, strong field. Actually, John Beale, don't forget.
Yeah, John
Beale. Yeah. So in the Formula 4 days, we sort of grew together, and Colin and Owen didn't do F3 because Ted obviously he was Mercury man anyway, isn't he, from his days. So they went straight into F2 and then F1 eventually. But no, we sort of, Mark Rolls, Paul Blackburn, there was plenty of drivers that sort of flourished, and we were fortunate to all race together at the same time.
Who was the one on the grid that you thought, I need to beat him into pole position, or I need to, do something about making sure I'm in front of him? Was there one driver in particular, or was there just
No, to be fair, there was quite everyone was relatively competitive. I think Formula 4, Dave Giggins probably was the driver that was a standout, I would say. It's a shame that he didn't sort of race other classes, although he did go to Australia, I know. But Dave, I think, was probably a standout. But I think, and the Jelfs were very quick and with the initial, because they had the Selvers before he brought everybody else. So they, and Ted was a wonderful engineer. Well, actually, the boys are as well. But so they sort of stole a march, and then we sort of came in latter stages with the Selver and managed to sort of compete with them. Yeah.
Are you still surprised that? Owen now is as good as he ever was. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
he's now really super quick again. Kind of drifted off and faded off a little bit, but now he's back on the money. You know, he's working. You mentioned earlier Massimo Roggiero. He's now working heavily with Massimo with that Baba boat, and then last year, of course, we see Colin return back to F2.
Yeah.
So does that surprise?
Well, yeah, I mean,
you know,
well, it doesn't surprise me actually, because I mean, if there's a family that is dedicated to powerboat racing, it's the Jelfs, isn't it? You know, I mean, that is their life, I would say. You know, and obviously with Ted, Ted's influence and dedication, yeah, it was inevitable, I suppose. And I think they'll just keep going on. Keeps them young, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I don't know if you ever look at them and think, well, you know, maybe you got one more season left in me somewhere, or have you just kind of put the whole thing to bed now?
I know. But John Hill, don't forget, John Hill. John was, you know, was he a grandfather when he finished or not? I don't know. But he was
possibly.
He was, yeah. Unfortunately, you know, he was killed. But you know, he was a good age, and competitive. Yeah. So, yeah.
But going back to you, because I want to talk about your year in Formula 2 in the World Championship in the year 2000. So we're now sort of a new millennium.
Yeah.
And now,
what about 98?
I'm thinking about
98. Sweden, runner up. I was runner up in Sweden.
So that was so that would have been a one-off event then.
Yeah, it was a one-off.
Was that
a one-off? One-off event. To be fair, back then the World Championship was a one-off. We had the European Championship, and you had the European Championship was a series, but the World Championship was a one-off event.
So 98 then, actually, you would have been really busy because 98 F2 was really strong over here, and then you're obviously going off. And doing that as well.
In Sweden, had a race in Sweden, and I think there was quite a few English drivers who came. Larry did. I know Larry definitely came. I don't know if can't remember.
Would Ted Walsh have gone as well?
Ted, maybe Ted came, but yeah, that was quite a nice race. But as you say, obviously the most prominent is the race in Paris in 2000.
And the competition there, I mean, how strong was that? Because it's a World Championship. It must have been, just throw some names at me who would have been at that event. I know it was about
Bruno Corsin.
And he was quick because he was quick in London.
He's a very quick driver. Zantelli was there.
Yeah.
There was oh my goodness, the F1 driver. His son now races, doesn't he? Italian.
Comparato.
Fabio. Yeah. He was racing. The Swedes. There was very, very stiff competition. Yeah.
Because I think was it 1997, the year before, we had the big event at Nottingham.
Yeah.
Which you probably know what I'm going to lead to with this. So, you know, that didn't end well for you. But again, it was a big, you know, it was a big race.
Yes.
International level, it was a big race.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, I mean, what happened? I mean, obviously, you lost your sponsor in the end. But I mean, was that because the boat was just had it gone through too much at that point?
Yeah, I think. Well, as I said to you, I really do sort of try and turn, and Dave, he just said, look, I think you've obviously given it too much, and that was it. But thankfully, it sort of I managed to stay in the boat and glide to the bank, which obviously so I didn't get wet really.
Which was good.
yeah, very good.
But I mean, that aside, so then, like say, you know, to come from that and then to go into a full season in 1998, and then, as I said, with the other championship as well. So, with that in mind, obviously, time is a big factor. And back then we were racing weekend. I think we had a weekend off, then it's the next weekend. Some weekends were back to back.
That's right.
And the calendar was, to me, it seemed like we spent all summer away. But I mean, just going back to some of the events over here, obviously you helped find some of the locations. We've mentioned Stockton, Willen Lake. Obviously you mentioned about Willen Lake being a really good event for you. But Stockton, now I know again a difficult circumstances. How hard for you as a driver? I mean, there was the news obviously about Andy Chesman, which
but see,
was
we were
through.
I didn't really know. We didn't have radios at that time, so I didn't really know what was going on. It was only obviously after the race when we got back in. I could see Paul Noon obviously was getting out of his boat, and his wife was Andrea, wasn't it? Yeah, she was sort of distressed, but you know, obviously we're just about to race, so you can't really focus on anything else. You got it, because obviously you got to be mindful of what you're about to do. So you know, I tried to sort of shut everything out, and it was only when we got back that we obviously all realised what actually happened. And it's very, very sad. Very, very,
that was a bit of a strange weekend anyway, wasn't it? Because I mean, there was that news that had come through, and then there was the pile-up. The 5-boat pile-up.
Absolutely, terrible. Absolutely, you couldn't really comprehend that happening, really. I mean, obviously, there's always the element of risk, isn't there? But to have an accident like that was something else, really.
And then you've got to go on the restart and then just hope the same thing. So and how hard is that to kind of, do you just put that to the back of your mind? I'll deal with that later, or?
I mean, as I say, you have got to stay focused. I mean, obviously, I was very conscious of just making sure when I drove around, I was counting the heads, and so I could make sure everybody's all right. I mean, that's the first thought, because obviously you don't want anybody. Well, they're friends, really. We didn't have really. Okay, we might have had a bit of rivalry, but to be fair, we were all quite friendly. So you didn't want anybody hurt. But
so that was Stockton Rother Valley again. That was another tight little race course for Formula 2.
Well, yeah, that was tight. Yeah, and because actually Paul was leading that race, one of the races there. Paul was leading, and I just saw again. I saw a gap on the inside, and there was a back marker. So I just managed to get my nose in really tight to the boy. He obviously then had to take evasive action, going round the back marker, and ended up on the bank. And that I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just sort of, what on earth's happened? Yeah, but fortunately he was okay, and there was nobody hurt, which was, again, a blessing. But it's what we do, isn't it? I mean, it's great while all the boats are on the water, but it is dangerous. We lost a lot of friends, haven't we? Over the years, and
absolutely. But then other race courses as well, which there seem to be loads of room. But you're probably now going to contradict me. Southport. I mean, what a brilliant venue that was. I mean, what was that like to race around?
Oh, actually, I love Southport. I actually raced there in Formula 4. That actually was my first season, and my first season in a Formula 4, I actually led the race. I was ahead of Ken. I couldn't believe it, and then I got round about the third turn, and the plug lead fell off.
Oh no!
Yeah. So, but that was great. I loved it. Yeah, I love Southport as a venue, because you've got the ability to have people watching, and it's a good little venue.
Yeah, it just seems to have the whole buzz, and like you say, you're there right by the seaside, although the sea is.
Yeah. Like we had the parade there, didn't we? Because we used to have the parades, didn't we, around the town?
I was trying to remember. Did you get a flat tire?
Yes, I did. What a memory! Yeah, wow. I did.
So I do remember that. Yeah,
we towed the dolly round, and yeah, I think the tires overheated. Unfortunately, or one of them did. Yeah, we got a flat tire. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, great days though. Fantastic
but
days.
they were great days, and you know, and then I guess we go from Southport. Fairford was another for me as a commentator, but to view Fairford was always a good course. But I mean, how tight was that in a Formula 2 in reality?
I don't think I raced Formula 2 in Fairford. Did I race at Formula 2 in Fairford? I'm trying to think. I don't think I did. I only raced Formula 4 at Fairford.
But even so, was that still?
Oh yeah, tight. Oh, in an F2 boat. Yeah, F2 boat. Yeah, but they raced F1s around there, didn't they? Or the ONs.
Yeah. Back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So very, very tight. Yeah, that was lovely, picturesque circuit, Fairford, and I think that possibly, I wouldn't say it was the downfall, but they were really nice locations as opposed to being locations where people could come and view. Because if you didn't know it was on, nobody would venture, would they? You see. So taking the racing to the people is obviously we thought was the way forward, but you know, there you go.
Yeah, and it seemed to work. One of the last races I kind of really remember you being at was London, and again, you're in a big, you know, Grand Prix. You're in a and you mentioned Bruno course, and so Bruno was there, and I was trying to think of the Christian Odson as well, another big name.
Christian, that's right. He had that lightweight DAC built, didn't he? Yeah, Christian was saying, but I sold my boat to
Dennis Jargonian.
Yes, and he and obviously my new boat was supposed to be delivered, so I had to run James's old boat, the heavy F1 boat. Yeah, because the new boat wasn't ready in time. So I had to race. I raced. But to be fair, my wife, I sort of made a promise to my wife that if I won the world championship in F2, I would finish.
That would be it.
So obviously when it happened, I sort of loosely kept the promise, you know, with obviously the F2 race in London and then the race in Qatar a month or so after. They were my last two, and I said to her, look, these are the last two races, and then I'll retire. So, but London race was very good. Yeah, enjoyed that.
Also in the mix of things though was Formula 1 along the career with an ex-world champion as your teammate.
It was random, really. I just had a sort of a telephone call out of the blue, and Fabrizio Bocca phoned up and said, how do you fancy having going in F1? I said, I'd love to. So drove over or flew over and had a quick test in his boat, and next thing is I was racing in Abu Dhabi, which was great. Actually, Larry raced in Abu Dhabi as well that year.
In obviously in a rival team. Now, would he have taken the? Was that the year?
No, he had that small.
He had the small
Seabold, the small Seabold. He had that. He was racing. Yeah, that was. No, F1. I think I would have liked to have done F1, but it's another sort of step again with time, finances, obviously. I mean, I did have a discussion with Red Bull about it, but they didn't really seem that sort of keen on it for some reason, and so I didn't. And to be fair, without their input, I don't think I didn't really pursue it 100%, you know. So, but I did enjoy racing F1. That was really, you know, something else.
What was the atmosphere like around the paddock, though?
Good. I mean, obviously I wasn't a threat to anybody, so it was all quite matey, and you know, most people sort of said hello and were quite jovial. So, I did enjoy it, and the Italians' hospitality obviously is very good, you know. Yeah, I did enjoy
lots
that.
of pizza and pasta.
That's right. Yeah, lots of red wine.
Well, so then I think the last time we see each other was back then in London. So Formula One returned back to London. You returned back to London to watch, and that. I mean, did that sort of rekindle any sort of feelings for?
Yeah. I mean, well, I wouldn't say rekindle. I mean, it sort of made me aware of just how quick the F1 boats are, because they look really quick in the docks, didn't they? You know, it was.
I stood back at when I turned up there on the Friday, and they were putting 1 or 2 boats out at a time, and then all of a sudden you got all of the boats out there, and it was like, and even I was a bit sort of gobsmacked because of to be talking about this, but actually I can't find any words to describe it at the moment, because it was so quick, and I think I was waiting for an accident to happen, because it could be one at any time, but actually to be fair, very quickly where we kind of really got away.
And the conditions, the conditions, you know, obviously the water bouncing back off the walls, and a lot of those F1, but well, I say a lot, there's a few of those F1 boats that are actually quite short, and I think they sort of, you know, they really sort of struggled to sort of keep the boats on the water to a degree. You know?
I mean, I didn't know how much time you had in the pits. I don't know if you sort of went, because
I went to see, you know, Duarte Beneventi, who obviously bought my F2 boat that I didn't drive. I know Duarte. I've known him for a while. Roger, you know, Scott Gilman.
Yeah,
he was there, wasn't he? I had a good chat with a few of them. Yeah,
a little trip down memory lane.
Yes,
what about the boats themselves? The boats themselves, because I mean, I wouldn't say they've changed drastically, but obviously since,
I think they have. But I think they've changed drastically. Yeah,
you do. So that's quite interesting. I mean, obviously the crash boxes, but I mean, what kind of things?
I was thinking that just the look of them, you know, they look almost alien to what I was used to, really, what I drove. But it's obviously safety, isn't it? Which makes perfect sense, you know.
And of course, you must have been looking around for a Burgess boat somewhere, but you obviously couldn't find one.
No, I think those the Burgess boats. What we were saying off air, weren't we, about Jonathan Jones? I think he had something to do with the molds, and
he ventured down the Dragon boat, really, didn't he? But it is, I think Formula One is now really sort of more and more so DAC are dominant in that. And then it seems F2 is either Babber or Molgard, really. But having said that, it was a Moore boat that won the World Championships in last year's World F2. So I guess it's a little bit, unpredictable.
Yeah, I think it's nice having different boat manufacturers. I think that's great, you know, because Dave obviously dominated F3. He dominated F1 for a lot of years as well, didn't he, Dave? When Jonathan and John Hill were racing, you know, he dominated F1 for a good few years. F3 he dominated, but then obviously Guido with his boats, he then took over the mantle, if you like, and DACs, like you say, with more boats, Molgards, and Rogers boats, the Barbars. You know, it's nice. I think it's healthy to have different manufacturers.
And if you were racing now, what boat would you probably?
I honestly haven't got a clue. I have not got a clue. It'll be interesting to drive one of the new ones, actually, just to see the comparison, how they feel, and I would like to do that.
Actually, I suppose one thing that majorly has changed is we were saying about the SST 120s. Yeah. So throughout your career, it was all SST 120, but then obviously Optimax turns up in 2008 or 2009, and there's been Optimax, but now obviously we read on the internet this week that F2 now there's a new Formula 2 engine coming out, which we all knew about anyway. So, and again, an even more greener engine supposedly, but again with that comes different. You know, you're gonna have to have a different style boat, and then the costs you know, and F1 is obviously coming through the same kind of thing. Where I guess when you were around in Formula 2, at least the engine, not necessarily manufacturer, because it was always going to be Mercury, but at least you knew that it was still going to be an SST 120 block, because there was no real talk.
No, the green sort of environmental health, environment damaging the environment, and it was not. I mean, it was obviously there, but you know, we always used biodegradable oils and what have you. So that was as far as we went back in the day. But yeah, no, I think we were, in a way, we were quite lucky. You know, lucky we had numbers. Lucky we had engines that were just out and out proper race engines. You know, it was affordable. I think now, I mean, the cost of the boats now and the rigs, just wow! I couldn't believe it. You know.
Yeah, so it's a shocker, isn't it? And and it transforms, I think, down through all of the, you know, even at grassroots levels.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So, and obviously the safety aspect. I'm not sure what it's like with the nationals now, but you know, it filters down, doesn't it? The safety aspect, which is obvious.
I mean, to be fair, the nationals are pretty much almost EUAM spec.
Well,
anyway, pretty much.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say necessarily all, but
but again, that there lies an expense, doesn't it? And obviously, there's only so many people that want to do the sport. There's only so many people that can afford to do the sport, and you know, there lies the problem, doesn't it, with numbers, dwindling numbers, and what have you.
Yeah, and it is about getting that door open again for people and making that accessible. And
yes, of course it is.
And everything else like that. One final thing, really, I think, Jerry. I think if you were to look back upon the whole time in boat racing, what's the one thing that really, you know, stands out? I mean, obviously the World Championship is there, but
I think
is there anything else?
Well, I think actually my whole period of racing, I think I was really fortunate to race in a period of time where it was ultra competitive. Numbers, well, as you say, you know, some races you had to qualify, and I think not in a selfish way, but we probably had the best times of national racing that there was, you know, and yeah, it's sad really, but yeah. So if there was one specific, probably the World Championship, but overall, I just enjoyed the people, enjoyed the time that we had. You know, that period of powerboat racing was just absolutely phenomenal, I think. You know,
it was great days, and you brought a lot of, you know, great memories as well. And I know that, you know, as this week has got nearer and nearer, everyone's sort of, you know, looking forward to tonight's show. And that's why I wanted to continue with it, because I wanted to get it out there tonight. And I think, you know, for me, watching you and commentating on you at the time, you know, I think at the time you don't realise exactly how special it is, but when you look back on it and when you watch videos on it and when you have memories, when you go through the programmes and you go through the magazines and that, you think, yeah, they were really, really special days. And
they were.
And obviously you were there, and you were right at the top of your game as well. You know,
but it was the people, it was the people involved as well that made it special. Obviously, the boats on the water were, you know, they were a part of it, but you know, the whole, everybody's involvement and everybody sort of striving for the same goal, if you like. That was, you know, when we were doing the promotion side, you know, I could see, you know, it really opened my eyes to how sort of selfless some people are, really. You know, they don't get, I mean, okay, they get accommodation, they don't really get rewarded for what they were doing. They just do it for the love of the sport. And obviously, you know, every sport needs people like that. And yeah, that's probably one of the strongest memories I'll have, really, is that the way that people were towards the sport and just doing it for the love of it, you know.
Yeah, I think it even sort of transpires, you know, even to this day, where, you know, people will still go around and it's not what they can take from it, it's what they can kind of put into it and everything else.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I guess,
Yes.
well, it's back to Leeds. Well, not physically, but well, I guess it would be actually if we
Yes.
were allowed in stadiums. But
Yes.
but the football
Yeah.
continues, and I have to say, if you don't mind me, how is the knee? Because
yes, it's not bad.
Up,
yeah, not bad. I had the operation on Monday, and I had a sleepless night last night. We had an hour's sleep, but yeah, it's right.
That was worrying about technology.
Yes, probably. Probably was. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, it's good. No, it's very good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, the knee is on the mend.
So, but yeah, in the meantime, sort of plenty of rest, plenty of hopefully watching football. Hopefully,
yes, yeah,
positive news with football stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm enjoying the season at the moment. With first season back in the Premier League, and I think we've shocked a few people, which is good. But it's nice to see Norwich back, because obviously then Larry and I can have the rivalry next season, because Norwich are back in the Prem. So
good excuse to go and see him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's probably watching actually. But there we go. Anyway,
very good.
Once again, I do apologise for technical things, but we got through it.
We did.
We've done the thing, and we'll put the videos and everything else in afterwards, and then compile it all together. But it's been a great night, and thanks for the memories.
Yeah,
you'll always be known, I think, to a lot of people as the Red Bull driver.
Well, yeah, probably.
And of course, Red Bull are still on top of their game. With
yes, they are.
Verstappen, at the weekend.
Yeah, they're doing really well. They're doing. I mean, I've had a couple of trips to the factory a few years ago, and obviously I used to go to the tyre days, which was absolutely phenomenal, because you're in the garage and what have you. But obviously we had the association with the bikes as well. Don't forget. Because John,
that's right, yeah.
John Reynolds came to Milton Keynes, didn't he, with some of his team, and they thoroughly enjoyed it. Thought we were mad. No, I've had a good association with, and I still talk to people from Red Bull. So it's good, very good.
Happy times.
Yeah, I've got to say. Yeah, well done to you as well, because it's you don't have to do this, and I think it's a great effort by you, to be perfectly honest.
I think what we're just trying to do really is because I'm lucky enough to have a great team behind me, and it gives me a good excuse to actually mention them, because of Fred Emney, he's been a big part of this.
Well, Fred, he's another one, isn't he? Fred, oh my goodness, yeah, Fred and Steve Reed. Yeah, I remember bringing Steve Reed home from Paris. It was when James and Ken raced. He was stuck for a lift.
Ah, right.
So he jumped in the camper with us and got a lift home. But anyway, happy times.
And Ryan Pruitt as well, who puts all the video stuff together. Which
brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
And, everyone's doing it for free, just so we can put.
Yes.
I think we're all we just want to see something happen this year. And
of course. Yeah. No, I will. I'm going to try and make an effort to come up to the club, as well. So. Well,
we were trying to get your father-in-law to come to the club in.
Yes.
If we got this World Championship race.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, no, maybe we'll both come up for that. That'd be lovely. Yeah, we'll both come up. Yeah.
And have and because also it was going to be a round of the Formula 2 National Championship, so that would be an even better excuse.
Yes, of course it would. It'd be wonderful. Yeah, it'd be great.
So come and have a little look. Anyway, Jerry, thanks so much for your time this evening and this week as well. Hope the knee recovers well, and just stay safe out there.
Yeah, and you take care.
I think that in this class particularly,
Richmond wins the 4th round of the British Formula Grand Prix Series by a handsome margin indeed. And as a delighted Jerry Pagemont returns to pick up the checkered flag, it's time for us to pick up on the points.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, all the guys, especially the guys who ran at the front, are very, very competitive, and I knew that with these two guys behind, it wasn't going to be easy at all.
How did you get to that first bend?
Well, I mean, it was actually quite difficult because there was a dog leg before the first actual turn, boys, and we were told in driver's briefing to leave enough room, so I was conscious of Colin, because he normally does start very well, to leave him enough room, but also to try and make the turn. So, you know, I was fortunate that the boat fired and just left the line, and I was away.